Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Sabbath School preview. We are in our 32nd anniversary today, so we're actually going to be doing a little bit of a shorter session. This is probably going to go maximum 40-45 minutes. Our topic is chapter 31 of the book of Proverbs. And before we take it, let's bow our heads and say a word of prayer. Dear Lord and our living Father, as we come before you this afternoon, we want to ask for your Holy Spirit to be with us. We ask, dear Lord, that you would teach us something new from your word, something that we can share with others and also take to heart on our own. Please grant us wisdom, grant us understanding, and please be with all those that are watching that will be sharing this information. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. This is the last chapter of the book of Proverbs, and it actually covers the sayings of King Lemuel. It's actually in two parts. The first part is the first part isn't really a poem, but the second one is an acrostic, and I'll explain that in a little bit. Let's go to the word, Proverbs 31, verse 1, and I'm going to be reading from the New Living Translation. It says, "The sayings of King Lemuel contain this message, which his mother taught him. O my son, O son of my womb, O son of my vows, do not waste your strength on women, on those who ruin kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, to guzzle wine. Rulers should not crave alcohol. For if they drink, they may forget the law, and not give justice to the oppressed. Alcohol is for the dying, and wine for those in bitter distress. Let them drink to forget their poverty, and remember their troubles no more." Actually, I'm going to stop there. It starts with the words in verse 3, "Do not waste your strength on women, on those who ruin kings." It says in the New International Version, it says, "Do not spend your strength on women, your vigor on those who ruin kings." The first time I read that, I thought that, I'm reading it here in both of these versions, and they're implying that women are the ones that are ruining kings. In other versions, though, it implies that it's the wine that is ruining kings. Now, people will take these verses. It could be both of them. People will take the verses that are mentioned here, and some people will say that this is where it says alcohol is permissible, and that we're able to do that. Personally, as a Christian, the Bible actually encourages not to drink alcohol, period. You know how it even says drink a little wine for your stomach's sake? There is a specific reason why the Bible says, it warns against alcohol. The person that this is written to, it's written to Lemuel, to King Lemuel, and it says in verse 4, "It is not for kings to drink wine." Now the question is, are we kings? And how are we kings? Does the Bible say that we're supposed to be kings? Because if we're just a regular person, then maybe we don't have this responsibility. But if we're kings, if we are meant to influence and lead people, maybe this is a responsibility that we should take to heart as Christians. So come with me to the book of Revelation, chapter 5, and verse 10. And I find it interesting that the Bible, that God, He calls us kings. Revelation is written by Jesus. Even though John's the one that wrote it, Revelation is the one speaking it. Revelation is spoken, it's the book of Jesus. It's the revelation of Jesus Christ. And I'm going to read from chapter 5, verse 10, but I'm just going to give a little bit of the context. John is seeing in vision the throne of heaven, and he sees God. And God's sitting on his throne, and he has a scroll. I don't have a scroll. Okay, imagine this is a scroll. He has a scroll, and there's seals on it. And nobody can open it except for one person. And in chapter 5, they identify this person as the lamb that was slain. And chapter 5 just talks about the worthiness of the lamb. And it says in verse 9 that the people that were praising the lamb, they sang a new song with these words. And they're talking about the lamb. They say, "You are worthy to take the scroll and to break its seals and to open it. For you were slaughtered, and your blood has ransomed people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation. And you have caused them to become" what? What does it say? Kings and priests for our God. and they will reign on the earth. So who is the one that's causing us to become kings and priests?
The Lamb.
The Lamb. So if we are going to be kings, excuse me, then counsel for kings applies to us. Jonah ran away from God, and he had a message that he was supposed to bring to Nineveh, and he didn't want to bring that message. But when he was asleep in the bottom of the boat and everybody was saying, "Go, wake up, call on your God," they asked Jonah. And Jonah was like questioned. He was asked, what should they do? Jonah knew exactly what they should do. He had understanding of what was going on, and he knew what they should do. Imagine if Jonah had been drunk at that time. Imagine if he'd been given to wine. It says those who are given to wine have a very strong chance to forget God's law. And Jonah, even though he was woken up, even though he was running away, he knew what they should do. He knew that all that stuff was happening was because of him. In the Bible, in Second Corinthians, Second Chronicles. I'm just going to get the verse. David had an army, and this is the people that were counted. This is First Chronicles. Sorry, not Second Chronicles. First Chronicles. Sure. Wait, let me write down the verses first. So this is Revelation 5:10, and this is the one saying that we are destined to be kings. First Chronicles, chapter 12, verse 32. This is a list of David's army in the book of Kings. First Kings, chapter 12. Sorry, I said Kings, I mean Chronicles. First Chronicles, chapter 12. I'm going to start at verse 1. I'm not going to read the whole thing. 12 verse 1. These were the men who came to David at Ziklag, while he was banished from the presence of Saul, son of Kish. They were among the warriors who helped him in battle. So this is a list of all the people that were helping David. And I'm just going to show you some of them. Start at verse 24. There was men of Judah carrying the shield and spear, 6,800 armed for battle. Men of Simeon, warriors ready for battle, this many. Men of Levi, including these families, this many. Men of Benjamin, verse 29, 3,000, most of them who had remained loyal to Saul's house until then. It goes through every single tribe, and it says who has been loyal. But verse 32 says something different. Verse 32 says men of Issachar, who understood the times and who knew what Israel should do. 200 chiefs, and all their relatives under their command. All the other nations, all the other tribes list only individual warriors. The children of Issachar mention tribes. They mention the leaders of those tribes. And it also says beyond that they had understanding of the times, and they knew what Israel ought to do. And if you think about that, they had a bigger message. In the Christian world, we have a lot of Christian churches. One of the messages that we have is to tell people about Jesus. And I would say that it's not just the Seventh-day Adventists that are telling the world about Jesus. We've got a lot of other Christian denominations doing that too. But the difference is that we may have understanding of the times and who know what Israel ought to do. And if you have a responsibility, if everybody believes almost the same thing, but there's one group that understands the time that we're living in and what we should do, then that group has a duty and a responsibility to stay sober so they can direct people in the last days. It says in Luke that men's hearts will be failing them for fear of what's coming on this earth. The Bible says that we have a role to play. And as Seventh-day Adventists, as people who know what's going on, if we know our responsibility, all the more we should avoid alcohol. We should avoid the things that would cause us to stumble. We're not supposed to give our strength to alcohol, or it says, and I lost the other thing, to the ways that, destroy kings?
Yeah.
So it is not for kings to guzzle wine. Rulers should not crave alcohol, for if they drink, this is Proverbs 31 verse 5, they may forget the law and not give justice to the oppressed. It says further, alcohol is for the dying, wine for those in bitter distress. You know, we don't believe that we're dying. technically our bodies were meant to last forever. I mean, our physical body may be dying, but God intends for us to live forever as his sons and as his daughters. And it's not intended for us. Just like the fire was the fire that's going to burn Satan is intended for the devil and his angels, and it's not intended for the people. Alcohol is not intended for us. Just going to do a quick side note. Some people say that Jesus said in the wedding of Cana that Jesus created alcohol for the whole party when he rated the water to wine. But the thing is that when God creates things, like God looks and he sees that it is what? That it's good. And so if God creates only good things, we know that fermentation comes because sin took something that was perfect and it started to make it degrade. And so fermentation represents sin. When they had when we have communion and we have the body and the blood is unleavened because there's no yeast, there's no fermentation. It represents Christ's purity. We attribute the same thing to the wine. There's no decay in it. When God creates something, he creates it good. He creates it perfect. If God makes water into wine, I don't believe that the wine is alcoholic. I believe that it is the pure juice of the vine. That is what God would have created back at creation. Otherwise, we could have said that God created fermentation from the beginning, but that's not consistent with his character, nor is it consistent with Jesus saying, it is good. Solomon says over and over that don't look at the glass when it's red. It causes people to start fighting. It causes a lot of different things, and we should avoid wine. Any questions or comments so far? I hope I'm not rushing through all of this.
I think a lot of people use verse 6 to give license to giving alcohol to someone. But the context is about a dying man. What the wise man is saying, hey, if somebody's dying in excruciating pain, it's difficult to die, give him alcohol. He's going to die. That's medicinal in terms of him numbing the pain and lessening the suffering. So this is not an endorsement of alcohol being drank by just anybody. This given to somebody ready to perish, which is somebody about to die.
To take pain, almost like a painkiller.
Yes.
Almost like a painkiller. Cool. Any other questions on this part?
The alcohol is used as a medicine. So.
Okay.
The problem is the second part of the verse 6. Those who are bitter of heart, let them drink and forget his poverty. This is more problematic for us than the first part.
But it's still connected to the one perishing. Let him drink and forget his poverty and remember his misery no more. So this is talking about probably a poor man dying, and he's dying in his poverty and he's having a miserable death. So that his death will be less miserable, you give him strong drink. That's gotta be the context of 6 and 7, the two verses.
Yeah, but it could be interpreted in two contexts. If you look at the text, the first part and the second part, and that will be like a voucher to give to let the poor people, the lowest, to drink.
If you look at verse 7, let
wow.
him drink. What's the antecedent for him?
Forget his poverty.
Yeah, let him drink. It says let him drink. That him must be there already if you use the pronoun. And that him is in verse 6. That him is the perishing man. So this was used by James MacDonald of Harvest Bible Church. Had a series on alcohol about 2 weeks ago. And this is one of the favorite texts of those who endorse alcohol for Christians. They used this text, and he did an exegesis on this. It's very clear. That guy's dying, he's miserable. In order to take him out of his misery, give him alcohol that will numb the misery, and he dies. Not a difficult death. That's it. So the him in verse 7.
That's what it says in Hebrew.
Yeah, 7 in him. The him in 7, the pronoun is the antecedent of that. Is the man who's dying.
Wow.
So it's.
If I was going to look at this in Hebrew, that's what I was looking at on my phone. it says, and I just lost it. The word for wine in Hebrew is yayin, and actually, I'm not going to explain all that stuff.
It's the same word for both conditions, fermented and unfermented.
Yes. It says, give wine to those who be, it says, le'amar, which means bitter. And it doesn't say hearts, it says nefesh, which is soul.
Oh, yeah.
Give wine to those who are bitter of soul, or who are poor in spirit, if I might say that. But it doesn't just say that. At the beginning it says, to those who are perishing. The word is, and that's the word that just disappeared. The word is abad, which it means to perish. But one of the first way to do it is annihilation, or to be lost. So it's talking about those who are definitely going to be, I'd say, heading toward the second death, and not specifically the first one. I have the word for abad is annihilate, annihilated, be lost, corrupted, destroyed, for destruction, obliterated. It does not say death specifically. Most of them are tending toward the second death definition of the term.
Yeah, the word can be used for Israel's destruction when it's unfaithful.
Yes.
Abad can be used there. But King Lemuel, obviously, is not Solomon writing this. I mean, take it as with take the way it reads. A natural reading is. It can also mean not just a destruction. It can mean to be lost, or to lose your nefesh, your soul, which is losing your soul is dying, right? When you lose your soul. So that's why I would think, because it was Lemuel who wrote this. The natural reading was, hey, somebody's dying in misery. Give him wine so he doesn't become miserable. They didn't have anesthesia then. They didn't have all the medications and the drugs.
That's
so
a very good.
Give him wine. I mean, like Timothy, he was admonished by Paul to take some wine for medicinal purposes. In this particular case, it's a palliative, because you're dying. You don't want to die in misery.
Yeah.
So,
But for us as Adventists, how do we see this? Because if we give the possibility, to use alcohol, we are coming in contrast with what the Bible
well, that's the wrong interpretation of verse 6. The interpretation of verse 6 is they use wine in the old context to alleviate the misery of the dying man. So you cannot use this as a text to give license to alcoholism or to drink wine. So what do you do with the dying man right now? They take him to the hospital. You don't give him wine. You give him probably morphine or somebody.
Strong.
But so you take the principle. Don't apply the necessary details of the context. But the bottom line is, wine is not given for drink. Wine is given as a medicine in this particular case to alleviate the misery of dying.
So we are okay with using alcohol as a medication. Not
when you get other medication today.
No. But
sure.
Because
sure.
For example, alcohol is used in combination with some decocts, for different diseases. Alcohol is used in this mouthwashes and all kind of stuff like that. So for medical reasons, we can use it, but that's for a short time, for terminal cases, as we discussed, not as a as you said, a license for everybody.
It's not a beverage.
Yeah.
It's medicine.
It's
and
a
there's
medicine.
Two different things.
Right.
So like, I don't want to like pick in the plot here. Like marijuana, do you legalize marijuana?
Yeah. We're gonna get.
We gotta go there.
That's worse.
Well, I think for medical reasons, instead of giving somebody some kind of hard painkillers, if the marijuana helps,
Sure.
I would say, why not?
Yeah. The only problem is you open up a can of worms and you
Yeah,
can
we're
buy
gonna
marijuana
get
over the
along.
counter.
There we go.
I understand
There we
that.
go. There we go.
I understand
Yes, but you're right. I mean, if I'm in a battlefield and I'm being drafted in the army and my body's dying, and I have no medicine with me and I got alcohol, I'll have him drink. Sure.
I fully
Let him drink.
I agree with you
Let him
100%. For municipal marijuana, if it helps somebody in a cancer patient, instead
You
of
got
giving them
nothing else.
hard drugs like morphine or something,
Sure.
go
Sure.
for it.
Well, the morphine is stronger than marijuana.
Yeah, I know.
It's
But
more expensive though.
and marijuana's not addicting.
It is. It is.
I beg to differ.
Don't say
I
that.
can't.
Wait, do you mind if I... Just because we have a lack of time
That's
today,
okay.
and
Yeah. Well,
Go on.
sorry, I didn't intend to
Well, that's okay.
cut things off. I'm gonna go down to the description of the virtuous woman. Verses 10 to 31 actually is an acrostic. An acrostic means that it starts with the first, like the alphabet for Hebrews is Aleph, Beth, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, and every single line starts with one Hebrew letter that's like then the next one follows it. It follows it in turn, and so it's a poem. And I'm just going to point out a few things in the time we have left. It says, I'm going to use this version. It says in the New Living Translation, "Who can find a virtuous and capable wife? She is more precious than rubies. Her husband can safely trust her, and she will greatly enrich his life. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life." And I'm reading this, and one of the words that came out to me that stood out was rubies. The word rubies is used just a few times in the Bible. Have we covered it here? Do you remember where rubies were used in the Bible before? Anybody know?
Temple.
All right. Let me show.
I think was one of the stones on the high priest.
Let me show you this book.
One of the 12.
Let's go to Proverbs 3. A lot of these definitions of rubies are from Proverbs. Proverbs 3 verse 15. And it
She
says,
is more precious than rubies.
"She is more precious than rubies." Actually, let's go to verse 13. So this is Proverbs 3. Put it there. Proverbs 3, 13 to 15. And this says, "Blessed is the man who finds" what? Wisdom. "And the man who gains understanding. For she is more profitable than silver, and yields better returns than gold. She is more precious than" what? Rubies. "Nothing you desire can compare with her." Let's go to Proverbs 8, verse 11. We'll start at verse 10. Proverbs 8, verse 10 and 11. "Choose instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is more precious than" rubies. "Nothing you desire can compare with her." It's interesting that a virtuous woman that's described is more precious than rubies. And one of the other things that is described as more precious than rubies is wisdom. There's an old quote that I used to read, and it says, "In youth and beauty, wisdom is rare." Some people look at Proverbs 31 and they think this is the ideal woman. And I've dated my share of different girls, and I've also gotten a chance to meet a lot of them. And I've also met a lot of parents that are like this too. It is possible to be virtuous. It is possible to match all the characteristics. I know a few people that do match it. It says, though, that in youth and beauty, wisdom is rare. If I were to look at the youth today, and you were to look at the young and the beautiful, how many of the young and the beautiful are also wise? That's very rare. And it's worth more than rubies. So the question is, who can find a virtuous and capable wife? She's more precious than rubies. Her husband can safely trust her, and she will greatly enrich his life. She'll bring him good, not harm, all the days of her life. As she goes through it, I'm gonna go back to the NIV just for this one. I'd like us to go to verse 21. It says here, "When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. Does anybody know what other verses talk about scarlet in the Bible?
Though your sins be as scarlet.
Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as the snow. This is in the book of Isaiah. I think this is Isaiah 1 verse 18.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that was scarlet? Do you remember when Joshua and the others, when they had sent people into Jericho, and they found the house of Rahab? Rahab asked that a scarlet cord be hung from her window, and so they would know who to spare. Do you know what color? Scarlet is the color of what? It's the color of blood. Besides that, they had to put the blood on the what? On the doorposts and on the top of it. This one says all of her household are clothed with scarlet. I was going to do a sermon, I haven't done it yet, but it was going to be called A Study in Scarlet, and just mention all the different parts where it talks about scarlet and what it means. For me, scarlet means you're covered by the blood of Christ. If you are covered in scarlet, symbolically, that means that you are protected. And this woman, not only is she virtuous, not only is she wise, but her children, her family is covered in scarlet. They're protected by the blood of the Lamb. And that's something significant, because I'm going to go back to this, not every young and beautiful person is wise. Not every young, beautiful, and wise person also believes in God. It's a rarity. I'm going to go down to verse... Wait, you know what? I'm jumping around here. Does anybody have any questions? Any thoughts come out in some of the stuff I'm sharing?
So scarlet here, is that like a certain kind of cloth that's really...
Oh, it does mean a rich cloth.
Is it more of symbolism, or it's really like literal, like covered with a cloth that's scarlet that's really thick to cover you from cold?
I would say that this is literal. I mean, in that they are talking about that her family is protected by the cold, but symbolically, if we're taking it in that way, it would mean that they're covered by the blood of Christ. Does that... Good?
Well, verse 22 might shed light there too. She says, she maketh herself coverings of tapestry, her clothing is silk and purple. So here, the clothing of the woman is silk and purple, but the clothing of her household
is scarlet.
Is scarlet. So those are two distinct objects there.
Okay. I want to go back for a second to verse... Let's go back to verse 13. And let's go from 13 onward. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands.
She seeks.
It depends on the Bible version. It depends on the Bible version. I'm reading the New International Version right now.
Yeah,
She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still dark. She provides food for her family and portions for her servant girls. If you come with me to Matthew chapter 25. Sorry, 24. Matthew chapter 24, verse 45. This verse says, "Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom the master has put in charge of his servants in the household to give them food at the proper time?" It says in the New King James Version, if I'm not mistaken, it says, "The faithful and wise servant gives people food in due season, at the right time." And that's significant because I'm going to give you a completely different illustration. A lot of people today, even Adventists, end up watching movies, even though we're cautioned to watch what we put in. We're cautioned to be careful about what we put in front of our eyes. And some movie ratings are PG, some are PG-13, some are rated 16, some are... Different people are given different ratings, are given different things because they believe it's appropriate to a specific age. Now, we may have a different standard as Christians, But we should know what to give to our children in the right time, in due season. One of the things that, if I can give you a, okay. This was the first mistake I ever made when I first heard about the Bible and about prophecy. I was taking honors natural sciences at my college in Montreal, and one of my friends, I found out, was Catholic. And I'm like, oh, you're Catholic? Did you know this? And I told her like the end result of stuff I was thinking about, and it was so offensive toward her that she never talked to me about religion ever again. Okay? It was my mistake. I don't know if God's going to speak to her through somebody else, but that was me not giving the right food in due season. It was me doing things out of sequence. The people who are faithful and wise and who are servants are the ones who know how to give food in due season. God is looking for people who are faithful, who are wise, and who are servants. And just step back on that. There are people that are faithful but are not wise. There are people that are wise, but they're not faithful. God is looking for people that are faithful and wise, but not only that, but they're willing to serve. That's humility. And these people that are faithful and wise servants, they know how to give food in due season. They know how to take the word they've been given, the food they've been given. If this is symbolical, this is the bread of life, they've been taking this and they know how to share it at the right time and at the right place. And so, if you just come back with me to Proverbs 31, it says, look at verse 15. She gets up while it is still dark, and she provides food for her family and portions for her servant girls. I know I'm interpreting this symbolically, but I want you to think about the families that take time to do their morning watch, that take time to do family worship in the morning. I mean, how early do kids go to school these days? How early do they go to school? Almost too early, right? They wake up. Do any of them wake up before dawn? Especially in the winter, while it is still dark, they get up. And I know some families that do family worship. And they get up, they wake up their kids, and they make sure that family worship is one of the first things they do together as a family. And they do that. And this is another characteristic of the virtuous woman. I would tell you, because I'm not going to be able to go through every possible thing in here, this definition is the church. A woman represents the church in the Bible, and symbolically, this is the church that Jesus falls in love with. Jesus is waiting for a church to be ready so that he can take them home. And it would be awesome if the church that he's looking for has the characteristics of the virtuous woman. Not everyone may be able to do everything together. I mean, may be able to do everything listed here on their own. But if we were together as a family, as a church family, if we were to make sure that all of the children, all the household were clothed in scarlet, that they had accepted Christ, if we were able to give food in due season, if we were able to be, and this is a bit earlier, if we were able to avoid alcohol completely and just teach people about the law and about grace, it would make a substantial difference. This woman is a woman that likes to work. She's not lazy. Proverbs talks about the lazy man's vineyard. Did you get a chance to go through the lazy man's vineyard in the book of Proverbs? It's called the slothful man. All right, let's go there. This is Proverbs chapter 12. I know I'm jumping around the book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter... Is it chapter 12? Chapter 12, verse 20... No, that's not it. I'm sorry, where is it? It's Proverbs chapter... Sorry, there it is. Proverbs chapter 24. I'm just doing some compare and contrast, and I'm going to show you how this ties in. Proverbs 24, verse 30 to 34. Proverbs 24, verse 30 to 34. I went past the field of the sluggard, that's a lazy person, past the vineyard of the man who lacks judgment. Thorns had come up everywhere. The ground was covered with weeds, and the stone wall was in ruins. I applied my heart to what I observed, and I learned a lesson from what I saw. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a bandit, and scarcity like an armed man. The sluggard did not take care of the vineyard that he had been given. There were thorns that had come up out of the ground. If you go to the book of Mark in the parable of the sower, thorns, they say, choke the seed that's been sown. It says the desire of the world, the cares of the world, the desire of the cares of the world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desire of other things choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. If we have been given a vineyard, we're supposed to take care of it. The slothful man, thorns had come up everywhere. The ground was covered in weeds, and the stone wall, that's protection, was in ruins. The slothful man had not paid attention to the state of his household. We contrast that to the virtuous woman in Proverbs 31. So she selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She's like a merchant ship bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it's still dark, provides food for her whole family. She considers the field, buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for the tasks. I could go on, but the concept is that this woman, this church, is hardworking. She knows how to take care of what she's been given. Whereas the slothful man that is mentioned in quite a few places in the book of Proverbs doesn't really, just a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands, and soon his poverty comes really, really quickly. Let me show you one last one. This one is Proverbs 26. Proverbs 26, verse 13 to 16. This is the slothful man or the sluggard. The slothful man or the sluggard buries his hand in the dish. He is too lazy to bring it back to his mouth. The sluggard is wiser in his... sorry, I read the wrong verse. 13. The sluggard says, there's a lion in the road. A fierce lion is roaming the streets. As a door turns on its hinges, so a sluggard turns on his bed. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish. He is too lazy to bring it to his mouth. There are three things that we're supposed to do in our spiritual lives. The first one is we're supposed to witness. We're supposed to share. We're supposed to do service. Share to God, share to others what we have done, what God has done for us. The second thing we're supposed to do is we're supposed to dedicate time to prayer for ourselves, to pray for other people. And the third one is to spend time in the Word, to study the Word of God. So listen to the sluggard. He doesn't want to go outside. He's like, I'm not going to leave the house today. There's a lion in the streets. There's a fierce lion that is roaming the streets. Who is the lion? Who is the lion that's roaming around seeking whom he may devour? That's Satan. There are people that are scared to do evangelism, that are scared to go out and tell people, there's a lion in the streets. Who knows what's going to happen to me? You know what? I'm scared of, today's not a good day to go and reach out to people. I'm going to stay home. Do we know anybody that may do that? Are we sometimes too scared to do that? As a door turns on its hinges, so a sluggard turns on his bed. They say that the best times to pray is when you wake up in the morning, or just about before you're about to go to sleep. The sluggard, instead of getting up to pray, he just turns over in his bed and goes back to sleep. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish. He's too lazy to bring it to his mouth. Do you know, have you had it any time when you try to open your Bible and you're like, I want to read, and you're trying to read and then you fall asleep? The sluggard is too tired or too lazy to do outreach, to do witnessing, too tired to pray, too tired to do Bible study. And because of that, the vineyard suffers. The church that God is looking for is a church that is hardworking, a church that gets up early, that knows how to take care of the family, take care of the household, take care of the vineyard, so that they're clothed in scarlet and they're prepared for the snow that is to come. Does this stuff make sense? I know I'm like jumping around Proverbs, but does this make sense of the story? Look at verse 20. And imagine instead of the woman, imagine the church. She opens her hands to the poor. Proverbs 31 verse 20. She opens her hands to the poor and extends her hand to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household. They're all clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed. She's clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gates, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, supplies the merchant with sashes. She's clothed with strength and dignity, and can laugh in the days to come. You know what? I'm just wondering if I should, what story that is. Have you heard the song that says something like, "We can smile in the face of the storm"? I forget how the words go. How does the words go?
You can smile anytime.
No, but before that,
With Christ.
with Christ in my vessel, I can smile at the storm. And it talks about Jesus being in the vessel with the disciples. And, you know, I mean, they were so scared, right? But when Jesus came and he said, "Peace, be still," they're like, who is this God that even the wind and the water obey him? And it says here in verse 25, she's clothed with strength and dignity and can laugh at the days to come. If we are in a vessel and Christ is with us, we're not going to fear what's going to come upon us. We can even laugh at the days to come. And this woman has Christ with her. She's able to smile in the face of the storm. I'm going to continue. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. What does it mean to eat the bread of idleness? Anybody know? Being a sluggard. Just, if you go to, you know what? Let's see if we can go there. Go with me to the book of Jude. Is that the right? Sorry, I'm looking for the bread of idleness. Bread.
What verse?
I thought it was in Jude. I may be wrong. Oh, sorry. It's not in Jude there. Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 49. Ezekiel chapter 16 and verse 49. Ezekiel 16. Sorry, I haven't been writing all the verses. Ezekiel 16 verse 49. Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and the needy. Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. You know what? I want to use a different Bible version. I have the wrong. I should be using. Oh, this is NKJV. Okay. In NKJV, it brings it out. I'm sorry, it doesn't translate it that way in the New International Version. Ezekiel 16, verse 49 says, "Look, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. She and her daughter had pride, fullness of food, and abundance of idleness. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and the needy." This is another woman. It's called an anthropomorphism, when you take a concept and you make it into a person. And the sin of Sodom was that she didn't take care of the poor and the needy, which the virtuous woman does. She does not eat the bread of idleness. They say that Sodom and Gomorrah descended into homosexuality and into a lot of the other things because they were bored. They had an abundance of bread and a lot of free time. They're like, you know, we have all the food we want. We can do whatever we want. Let's experiment. The virtuous woman does not eat the bread of idleness. She's not lazy. She's hardworking. Verse 28, her children stand and bless her. Her husband praises her. There are how many? It doesn't say. It says, there are many virtuous and capable women in the world, but you surpass them all. This woman has children, and the children do not curse their parents. A lot of the Proverbs in the book of Proverbs talk about parents to children, and it talks about children to the parents, and it says so many things like, what a foolish person it is that curses, that does not listen to the instruction of the father, and that curses his mother. And it repeats that over and over through the book of Proverbs as we've studied that throughout this quarter. Her children stand and bless her. These are children that are wise. These are children that are not foolish. They do not curse their parents. They do not put down their parents. Instead, they stand and they say, she is blessed. Look at what she's done for us. She's given us God. She's given us a home. She's given us a family. She's given us food when we needed it. She takes care of the needy. She's a good example. She's hardworking. This person, our mom, is blessed. And they're amazed and they're proud of her. Her husband praises her too. It says that her husband can safely trust her all the days of his life. And God does that to the people that are faithful to him. God safely trusts them. It says in John that God knows what's in the hearts of humans. And so he did not trust when some people say stuff to him. But it says here that in verse 11 it says, her husband can trust her safely and she will greatly enrich his life. I'm going to end with the last verses just because, I'm sorry, I've been going through this a little bit faster than I would normally. Verse 30. Charm is deceitful and beauty is fleeting. But a woman, and beauty is fleeting. But a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the reward she has earned, and let her works praise her at the city gate. I want you to think about the New Jerusalem coming down as a bride for her husband. And, we think that when Jesus is coming, his reward is with him to give to everybody what they deserve. This church gets the reward to be with Christ. That's the reward that she deserves. Her works praise her at the city gate. The serpent charmed Eve. The serpent was beautiful. But the woman that fears God over charm and over beauty, that's the one that shall be praised. And so, the wife of noble character, who can find it? If anybody can find this woman, it's God. But I would say that as for us, as for our church, we should strive to be like this woman. We should strive to prepare our household for the snow that is to come by clothing them in scarlet, by not being idle, by taking care of the vineyard that God has given us, by doing outreach, by reaching out to people, by not being lazy. If God has impressed us to reach out to people, we should do that. If God has impressed us to study the Bible, we should. And if we're struggling with staying awake, if we're struggling with staying focused, let's lift each other up. Let's ask someone to study with us. Let's do it in a way that will give us a chance to be ready for Jesus to come. I'm going to stop right now. I'm going to ask, does anybody have any questions right now? All right. Then I'd like to ask an appeal from you today. I'd like you, when you read chapter 31 of Proverbs, besides, for those that are single, who are looking for someone to be with, I'd rather that instead of just looking for someone that matches all these characteristics, think about this as an allegory, as an example, as a symbol of the church that God falls in love with. And ask yourself, do we have that in our church today? If we don't, this is something we need to work on. We can criticize the church all we want, but we make up the church. And if we are not doing this in our own families, if we're not providing for them, caring for the needy, and just doing what an industrious, virtuous woman is doing, then we are not going to be ready for his return. So that's my prayer this afternoon.
It's kind of related to the sermon this morning. It's a beautiful way to put the parable of the Good Samaritan. And I like your angle in taking this allegorically, because you're going to find a woman today like this. She earns the living, she keeps the house, she does everything. You
It's a
know,
Wonder Woman.
not even, it's more than this Superwoman, it's just Wonder Woman. So, I mean, like, RJ, you know, you cannot find a woman like this. Okay?
Not
Yeah,
in America.
then, you know, like,
Good luck, RJ.
yeah, like today, what we encourage women to stay in home, not work. But the Proverbs 31 woman works and still takes care of the family. Man, it's just so, like, that's why I like your angle. I'd like to treat this as an allegory about the church, the bride of Jesus Christ. It's the fellowship of the believers, the kingdom of God. And I think we should have this as our traits, as corporately, not so much as a single person. So.
Amen. Let's.
It's just an allegory of the church.
Oh, it could be considered an allegory.
Yeah, like, yeah.
Because
I'm not saying it is.
I listen to some religious radio stations. They encourage women to be a Proverbs 31 woman. I mean, you're asking for the impossible today. I mean,
It's-
you're,
it is
you're
a lot.
speaking from the both sides of our mouth. You stay at home, but I want you to earn the living as well. Says Proverbs 31. You can't. So I think the angle and an allegorical understanding would be more palatable, more practical for the study of the lesson.
Amen. It's not impossible. It's just rare. It's just rare. I believe there are women like that. I've seen. I'm going to say this to myself. I've seen my mom fit this. I've seen other aunties in the church fit this description. I know other girls that have fit this description. They're like, I don't think I'm that. But when you speak to their family, you see how hardworking some of the women are in our lives. And they're actually strong enough to match that. Not everybody does, but there are some people that do. And I think it is possible. I think it's an ideal we can strive for, but I especially think it's something that the church should strive for as a whole.
I think you should. The danger here is to give some of the ladies in their Sabbath school classes the false expectation
Oh, okay.
that you can. I mean, it's almost like in order to be a girlfriend, you must be a beauty queen. You know what's the profile of a beauty queen today? And I don't think it's normal. Yeah, it's something abnormal for somebody to be a breadwinner and then a mom as well. Unless you're a businesswoman like your mom, you know. I know some people are businesswomen who's responsible to do that, but hey, you know, if you look for a woman like this, you'll never get married. Yeah. So I'm saying, to be practical, I would not. These are good traits, but I would be between having a career for women
Or a family.
and be a what do you call that? What's the opposite of a career woman? It's
Family?
a family wife.
House.
I'd go for somebody who will take care of the family,
Yeah.
I mean, at least within the context of our culture today.
You should tell that to the womanizers.
We have to
And
start in
then
about 3
not-
minutes at the other place.
Okay.
To
I'm sorry.
Kyoshin Han and to
It's just
Daniel Jackson.
It's just like
They
the verse
have to
30
have
thing. Because this one I always memorize this, but then I said it's so impossible for me to
Mhm.
be like one. Like they always encourage us. But the verse 30, that's the one that I like most. But the woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. So
Amen.
that's the most important thing. I've been fearing God. So you cannot be always like this, but you have the fear of the Lord. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, and then if you go back, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So you're really looking for a wise woman, right?
Amen.
Not so much the beautiful woman as much as the wise woman. Really, a wise woman becomes beautiful in long term, right?
I think here is
When
more
we're-
about the
we're really-
character than the physical appearance.
Yeah, but you gotta understand, if somebody is beautiful in character, she'll turn out beautiful. I mean, and beauty is not just skin deep the way you look. I mean, beauty is the whole personality, and then I'd much rather have somebody who's wise, who has the fear of the Lord. And
This woman is never described by her appearance. She's only described by the clothing that her children has and by the clothing that she wears and by what she does. you have no idea that she's beautiful or that she's not, that she's charming or that she's not. It doesn't mention that at all. That's a different topic for another time. Let's have
a sermon about it.
no. I'm just gonna say one last thing. There's a sermon I heard, and it's called "Wise Men Still Seek Him," and it talks about the wise men who left their place in the east and came to go look for Jesus because they were looking for Him. Wise men are searching for God. I believe wise women are too. And if we both search for God, I believe we'll find each other. So let's do it and let's close. Dear Lord, we want to thank you for the short time that we had to cover Proverbs 31. We know there's so much more that could have been said, but we want to thank you for the short time that we spent. And we want to ask, dear Lord, that you would help our church to reflect corporately this virtuous woman. We want to be ready for your return. We want to prepare our church. We don't want to eat the bread of idleness. We want to be hard worker for you. We want to be virtuous. We want you to trust us, dear Lord. We want to hold true to the promises that we've made to you, even though we break them. We know that even though we're not as faithful as we could be, we know that you're faithful to us. And we want to ask, dear Lord, that you would help us to be ready and help us to be pure. Help us to fully resemble the virtuous woman so that when you come in the clouds of heaven, that we'd be ready to accept you as our Lord and as our Savior and as our heavenly spouse too. We ask this, dear Lord, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.